Computer issues.
All right, we are live.
All right. Hey, it's good to see everybody again for another week here at Good Medicine Way. For all of our new members, Mike Taguvin, Hao Midakiapi, Noah Akitaru. I'm saying hello, everyone. In my many different languages. Um, I am coming to you from the land of the Caddo, Comanche, Kiowa, Osage, and Wichita nations here in Oklahoma City. My name is Upeti Daka, which means white star in the Pawnee language, and I am going to be your MC for the night. Good Medicine Way comes to you from the land of the Tewa people or the Pueblo people. It is also ancestral homeland for the Dene people and the Apache as well. So I just wanted to do a little land acknowledgement there to say thank you to all the tribes who took care of the area around Albuquerque, New Mexico, the land of the watermelon mountain and green chili. Just kidding. But yes, and that is where Good Medicine Way comes to you from in Albuquerque, New Mexico. I'm going to go ahead and hand this off to my brother Eshe for our opening or directional prayer. So Eshe, if you're ready, hey, if you is able to be on here right now, hey, I'll go ahead and hand it on over to you, brother.
Natio Shaho, thank you. All right, we're gonna do a four directions prayer, and we're gonna start in the east. Light bearer, we now face the east. We thank you for a new day and a new beginning. We thank you for the fire which gives us warmth, light, and protection, and for our inner breath that is rejuvenated each new day through your spirit. You remember the times of old when our ancestors would gather around the sacred fire, and remember that we are human beings made for relationship. We ask that whatever parts of our being need light, that you would shine your life-giving spirit on us, just as Father Son shines life-giving light on Mother Earth and all of us each new day. Bring light and wisdom to our life's journey, so that we may not walk in darkness. In life-giving spirit, we now face the south. We thank you for the gift of healing and adaptability. We thank you for the waters of life which nourish our beings. We know that without water, we would die very quickly, and so we give thanks for this element that nourishes us. Help us to care for the waters of life. We ask that you would show us how to be fluid also like water, so that when new or challenging situations come to us, that we can make the right choice and navigate those situations in a good way. Bring abundance to our lives so that we can channel that abundance to those around us. And great healer, we now face the west. We thank you for the night as well as for the day. We thank you for bringing to light what would have otherwise remained in darkness. And we also thank you for the challenges of life that can increase our dependence on the light, and that can take us through the tests so that we can grow more and more through that. We know that seeds and new and beautiful things grow out of the darkness. And we know that the soil is also life-giving. We are thankful for the soil, and we ask that we will sense our responsibility to keeping the land well and healthy for all creation and for the future generations. We ask that whatever arises that is negative, that you would give us clarity and peace to know how to navigate them and how to end cycles that don't need to be continued, that don't serve us, that don't serve you, or don't serve the community of creation. Bring rest to our hearts, to our minds, to our bodies, and resolutions to the cycles we encounter, just as our relatives rest when the sun sets each new day. Rescuing spirit, we now face the north. We thank you for the spirit of the wind, which breathes life into all of us moment by moment. We thank your life-giving breath for resurrecting the parts of us that need nourishing, needed life. We know that without the wind, the air, your spirit breath, we would die very quickly. We are thankful for the air and winds of life that nourish us and all of creation. Help us to care for them. We ask that our minds and hearts would be nourished and kept well. We ask for good thoughts and for protection from the crooked ways of the evil one. And we also ask you for a blessing and guidance to those we perceive to be our enemies. Bring your protection and purifying presence to revive what needs healing and new life, just as the winds blow the dead leaves from the trees so that new leaves may grow in their place. The Spirit which comes to us from Grandmother Earth, we thank you for supporting our feet, for feeding us and nourishing us throughout our lives. It is said that when we leave the womb of our human mothers, that you become our mother, that you support us throughout our lives and nourish us, feed us. We ask that whatever Creator, that you would have us to do with our hands and feet to bring life and to bring new creation within the present creation, that you would help us to follow Creator, become human, Creator, become free in doing so. And that we'd hear and respond to your voice in whatever small or large way that is. We ask you to help us and to take pity on us as human beings so that we can use the gifts you provide us in a good way in order to bring more life into the world. The Spirit which comes to us from Father Sky, we thank you for the blessings of life, Creator, and we ask that you would be near us moment by moment, that we sense your presence. Remind us of your power when we get desperate, when we get depressed, and communicate to us with your compassion, with your peace, and with your love, so that our hearts may be soft, and so we may have peace in you. Let it be so.
All right. Thank you, brother. That was very beautiful. I love listening to the directional prayer every single week. But yes. Okay, and now we're going to go into our opening song, which will be rendered by Brian. So I'm gonna go ahead and hand this one over to Brian and let him do his thing, eh? So go ahead and take it away, Brian.
All right, we're going to do a couple songs. We'll do To Your Voice We Run by Darn It's a Miracle, and then we'll go right into the Powwow 61 song. Yahweh, Yahweh, way, hey, hey, oh. Yahweh, 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 way, hey, hey, oh. Way, hey, way, way, Yahweh, 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 way, hey, oh. Way, 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 Yahweh, 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 way, hey, oh. Hear my cry, oh God, listen to my prayer. From the ends of the earth, I call to you when my heart is faint. Lead me to the rock that is higher than I, for you have been a refuge for me, and a tower of strength against the enemy, a tower of strength against the enemy. Hear my cry, oh God, listen to my prayer. From the ends of the earth, I call to you when my heart is faint. Lead me to the rock that is higher than I, for you have been a refuge for me, and a tower of strength against the enemy, a tower of strength against the enemy, a tower of strength against the enemy. And let me dwell in your tent forever. Yahweh, 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 way, hey, oh. Yahweh, Yahweh, we dwell in your tent forever. 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 Forever.
Thank you very much for that, Brian. And everyone else who's in the service in person today. I could hear all of you in the background. It was very beautiful. Brian and his music, always likes to pull at my heartstrings. Just kidding. All right. So, we're going to be going into our creation insights. And this is like a time where we get a moment to speak on what Creator has put on our hearts for, just to share. Hey, and tonight we have a very special person that is always in our Zoom meetings, making sure we have all the links and any kind of history that we need pertaining to the things that are shared here. Our very own Dave S. I'm sorry, I don't quite know your last name, but he is sharing a special insight with us. So I will be reading it for him. My video may turn off because I didn't finish writing it all down yet. So, but here we go, from our very dear relative Dave. It is called In Praise of Dogs. He says, I am a dog person. I always have been. I know some people don't particularly like them, and plenty of cultures around the world don't really care for them, but I absolutely love them. Dogs are called man's best friend for a reason. They are unfailingly faithful to their human companions. In fact, the Hebrew word for dog is kelev. I'm supposing. I do apologize for that. Which some believe is a compound of two words, kol and lev, meaning all heart or faithful. And we have been benefactors of that faithfulness. Before the introduction of the horse, Plains tribes relied on the dog, or the shunka, for their mobility and as hunting companions. And sometimes we eat them. Just kidding. There are countless stories of dogs who refuse to leave their owners' graves. Dogs who go back to the last place they saw their owners every day for years, etc. Hey, think about Hachi. Just kidding. If you need any other proof of dogs' devotion to people, just type "We don't deserve dogs" into Google and read the stories. Pro tip, have a box of tissues around because you will end up crying. Their faithfulness is attested to by scientific research as well. New studies suggest that dogs can follow human gestures better than a small child because they are that attuned to trying to understand us. However, as humans, we do not always return their faithfulness. Just consider some of the ways we use the word dog in our daily speech. I'm thinking of phrases such as, "You wouldn't treat a dog like that." Actually, if you wouldn't treat a dog like that, why would you treat anything else like that? Lower than a dog, kick the dog, dumber than a dog, stupid dog, uglier than a dog. Hold on, I'm gonna go off for a second. Yeah, uglier than a dog. Okay, so I really love dogs, but what does that have to do with creation insights? I think our relationship with dogs can reveal things about God's character to us. If we just pay attention to that creation, including dogs, dogs show us that God is faithful to us, even if we are not faithful to him. For example, look at Romans 1:20 and 21a. Ever since the world was made, his invisible, never ending power and sacred spirit have been understood and clearly shown through the things that he has made. For even though they knew him as creator, they did not thank him or give him the honor he deserved, from the First Nations version. Or Romans 5:8 from the New International Version. But God demonstrates his own love for us in this: when we were still sinners, Christ died for us. So the next time you see a stray dog on the street, or you hear someone use one of those phrases, denigrating dogs, remember what dogs' love and faithfulness tells us about our relationship with Creator. Dogs reflect, maybe better than any other part of creation, God's devotion to us. So when it's not just a coincidence that the spelling of dog is the mirror of spelling God. So, yes, that was very beautiful, Dave. Thank you for sharing that with us. And yeah, you're right. Dog and God spelled backwards. They're mirrors of each other. That's very cute. I love that. So we appreciate our Shunkas here. Hey, I got my Shunka over there. Their faithfulness is really true. Hey, so yes, again, thank you, Dave, for that. He put it together pretty quickly. So yes. Hey. All right. So the next thing that we're going into is one moment. Let me find it. Hold on. Okay. But yes, that was very cute. We're gonna start appreciating our doggies a little bit more. The next thing that we will go into is reading the Lord's Prayer from the First Nations version. It will be led by Brian, who also knows a bit of the sign language, But again, we miss you, Leah Maku, and we hope to see you again soon, So I'm going to go ahead and hand this one over to Brian for the Lord's Prayer from the First Nations version. So go ahead and take it away, Brian.
All right. So yeah, if you remember any of the sign language, feel free to toss it in there. I think between our group, probably everybody remembers one of the words. So if we like conglomerated us, probably somebody would be able to tell. Anyway, Creator sets free, shows us how to pray. O great Spirit, our Father from above, we honor your name as sacred and holy. Bring your good road to us, where the beauty of your ways in the spirit world above is reflected in the earth below. Provide for us day by day the elk, the buffalo, the salmon, the corn, the squash, and the wild rice, all the things we need for each day. Release us from the things we have done wrong. In the same way, we release others who have done wrong to us. Guide us away from the things that tempt us to stray from your good road, and set us free from the evil one and his worthless ways. I hope, may it be so.
All right. Aho. Aho, may it be so. That was the first thing I learned, I'm sure many of us did too, But yes. Okay, so now we're going to be going into our smoke signals and giveaway time, So I'm going to hand it over to either Uncle Casey or to our relative Brian here. So just go ahead and take it away.
All right, yeah. Well, in the house, one way or another, we'll get it figured out.
Yeah, and I made it back here from Sioux Falls. We drove 17 hours straight from yesterday morning, and made our way back here. So I'm kind of in a time warp here. I think the way you call it jet lag, but um, so we got in about 10. But we had 3 drivers, so we pushed it, and I wanted to be here tonight, so we're good. So a couple things that are coming up. Just looking at it right here. Next week, we're going to be having the listen group. The InterVarsity group is going to be here on the 17th. I'm going to ask them to share with us what they do on this trip and introduce some of the folks that are with them. We're going to be hosting them here in-house, so they're going to be sleeping over. We've got a room over here where the ladies can have their own space, and then we got room here, and then there is just across the street here a place for them to go and get showers that they can. They're going to be using this place as a kind of the home base while they travel out here. So they're going to be doing their visit out here 17, 18, 19, and we're going to have breakfast with them, and we're going to have dinner with them. So that'll be a good day with them. We got our book group on Tuesday. Tomorrow we'll be having that, going through the book Native. I used several verses from this, chapters and quotes from it in my paper that I delivered this past weekend here at the NATE Symposium. And the shirt that I'm wearing here, you can see, this is the shirt that they gave everybody. So everybody that was there was sporting the black t-shirt and blue jeans, which is really cool. All these theologians know there was hardly any suit and ties in the whole group. You know, we kind of put those out. That's kind of like the colonizers' dress. So everybody's going to get that feel. So we were really laid back, really cool people there. Then we got coming up the following week here. We're going to take our break, as long as you remember. We'll probably post it that we are taking a break. We're going to be not having service on July 8, 15, and 22. So just make a note of that. That's going to be your time. So do your visiting, do your travels, go visit family, do that during that time here. I'm going to be taking a couple of different trips during this period too. So it's a good time for me to do that when we're not meeting. Good Medicine Way is going to have a table this next week, starting Wednesday and Thursday and Friday morning. Here in town, we're going to have a table with the United Methodist Church's annual conference. So it's here in town. We don't have to travel anywhere. So it gets a chance to visit all the churches that are still part of the United Methodist Church. Because I think many of you know that there was this divide that took place. So there is the global church, and then there is the United Methodist Church. And they could not come to terms and stay together, so they decided that it would be better to have this little divide to keep on moving forward. They're all doing the Lord's work, but with different viewpoints. Let's see what we got. So keep me in prayer. I'm putting together a little talk for the Veterans Hospital. I'm going to be doing a filming with a couple of folks about the use of Native American spirituality, the sweat lodge, and healing practices. And because we do have a sweat lodge over at the Veterans Hospital here in town, where before COVID was pretty active, and now we're going to be picking that up again. So the filming will take place on the 24th, and then it will be coming out for November, Native American Heritage Month. So that's coming down our way here too. The women's book group. Christina, did I see you on there?
No.
Oh, it stepped off.
Yeah, I don't think she is. But anyway, the women's group meets Thursday nights online. We'll post the link on our Facebook page, and then you can direct message Christina Morales for the passcode to get in. And they're going through Kate Armas's Sacred Belonging. And so even if you don't have the book, or if you haven't participated, you can still jump in because it's a book that's kind of set up in devotional readings. and they typically read through the little devotion and then discuss it together. So, yeah, if you don't, you can do prep work and read it beforehand if you want to, but you don't have to. So anybody can, any lady can join in there, and that's Thursday nights at 7 p.m.
All right. Anyone else got something? Raise your hand if you do. Otherwise, I do have a couple of very exciting things to let you know about. We just had a meeting here a week or so ago with the New Church Development Committee and our representative, D.G. Holman, who is our chairperson of New Church Development. We had a long talk. Our coach was there. We talked about the differences of starting a kind of like a white Western church plant and what it would be to start a Native American church plant. And through all of that, they made a decision to get us not in the 5-year program, but extend us into a 5 to 10-year program where it will take longer for us. They are going to increase the amount of money that they give us, so there will be a lot of ways to do programming for us. A big one that's come out, there is a grant, a matching grant that they're providing that up to $7,500. So whatever you're able to give towards that, they will match it. So we're already in good standing there. We have a lot of people that give pretty faithfully. So if you are able to give a little bit, maybe another little bit towards that, we'd be able to raise. And then because we're looking to a point here where we want to hire a treasurer. My wife is going to step down. So we'll have a treasurer, and they're going to be looking towards going and doing all the work towards getting us a 501c nonprofit status. So the church, United Methodist Church, is going to have a person work with us to get that process done. So Brian and I may get a little boost in pay with that too, and we vote on that, and that may happen too because all the work that we put in here. We would do it as volunteers, but now that we do have some funds, it makes it easier on us to do the work that we do and make sure that we have the program every week here. Let's see, the other thing is that they're going to extend us into what's called a mission status. So that'll take us in, and we'll be able to put in for grants still the way we have been to do ministry, just like we did with the food for thought that we're doing and the trauma-informed care that Laura did. All those kind of things we'll still be able to do, and even more. So pray about this, and if one of you is a treasurer and you want to fulfill a call of God and come out here to Albuquerque and be our treasurer, come on out. We're looking for somebody to join us in that and take us on to the next stage of Good Medicine Way. So we'll fill you in more with all of that. Those are just the highlights of it. There's a couple other pieces in there that are just exciting too, that as we move forward. So with all that, that's all I have. We'll go into our giveaway time. So the giveaway time, Laura and I are also going to give our little portion too, so that we can increase that to that 7,500 goal, so that we can have all of that extra funds to do the programming and do the work that we have here. Because we just need those ideas of what we can do even more than what we do now. There's only 5 or 6 of us that make this all happen. So we just need your support and a couple more people to come on board, step up, and be active with us. So with that, we're going to do a flute song.
Not for the giveaway. It'll be the Creative Me song.
Creative Me song, and we're going to be doing that as we do our blanket giveaway. And Brian will tell you about how the different ways to share electronic.
So if you go to the Good Medicine Way page, right at the top, there's a pinned link that goes to a PayPal interface. You don't have to be on PayPal to use it, but it's a way that you can give online with your favorite plastic or digital means. And then we also have our QR code blanket, and the QR code takes you to the same spot. And so you can enjoy the blanket. And if you're clicking on the link to give, you can do that. You our Created Me song, which is actually a song that I co-opted out of the Jesus movement of the 70s. If any of you are old enough or theology historians to remember that. But this song came out of that.
It came out of that Jesus Revolution movie time, wasn't it?
Yeah. This was actually, this version that I know was written by the Talbot brothers, who were a couple musicians who were in this band called the Mason Prophet Band, and then they came to know Jesus and started doing their own music, and this was one of the songs they did.
It was a time of big change, but pushed a lot of buttons for people too.
Yeah.
They weren't ready for it, but it made its way in.
Yeah. It was almost as big of a deal as the contextualization controversy. But,
so we got to battle it out here, and pretty soon we'll be the mainstream.
So man, if stinky hippies can worship Christ as stinky hippies, and like natives can worship Christ as natives, so
Not as stinky anymore.
not as stinky. Yeah. Create in me a clean heart, O God. Let me be like you in all my ways. Give me your strength. Teach me your song. Shelter me in the shadow of your wings. For we are your righteousness. If we've died to ourselves and lived through your death, then we shall be born again to be blessed in your love. Create in me a clean heart, O God. Let me be like you in all my ways. Give me your strength. Teach me your song. Shelter me in the shadow of your wings. For we are your righteousness. If we've died to ourselves and lived through your death, then we shall be born again to be blessed in your love.
All right. That was absolutely beautiful. I was thinking you were talking about stinky hippies, right? I was like, we're not stinky, we're greasy. We naturally shine. Just kidding.
It's all that greasy fry bread.
Exactly. Should I play the video again? Just kidding. But yeah. Oh goodness. But yes, I really do enjoy the songs that Brian offers, and I love hearing the rattles. So I'm very happy that these stinky hippies started to help start a movement, for our Indian people, for our Native people, So now we'll be going into reading Creator's Word. I will be calling on Karen Johnson to read John 13, verses 34-35, John 14, verse 23, 1 John chapter 3, verses 16-18. So go ahead and take it away, Karen.
Okay, my battery is rapidly going, so I think I'll be able to do this, but I'm going to have to shut down, and tomorrow I've got to go buy a new cord. So the first one is 1 John 13, 34 and 35. I am giving you a new road to walk, he said. In the same way I have loved you, you are to love each other. This kind of love will be the sign for all people that you are walking the road with me. John 14:23. I will show myself to the ones who love me and are staying true to my teachings. They will be loved by my Father, and we will come and make our home in and among them. And then the First John, let's see, 1 John 3:16 and 18. The chosen one laid down his life for us. This is how we know that what love is. In the same way, we should lay our lives down for each other. And then Brian made a suggestion, a slight adaptation in verse 17, which reads, if one who has received healing sees another suffering from trauma and will not walk alongside them on the road towards healing, how can Creator's love remain in that person? The reading of God's word according to the First Nations version.
All right, thank you, Karen. Thank you. That was very beautiful. So now we'll be going into our centering and stillness time, a Native American flute with a tree video, eh? So I'm gonna go ahead and hand it over to Brian, eh? So that way he can render us the stillness and centering time.
Yeah, I'm fortunate enough that somehow Joe Lopez took me on as one of his. He prays for a lot of people, and I happen to be in a group of people that he often prays for. And so yeah, he often shares these little videos of where he is praying, and sometimes he also plays the flute. But this one is just a video of where he was praying from. But I thought the image kind of went well with the whole idea of getting spiritual inspiration for moving forward. So I'll be playing the flute, but we'll be looking at Joe's tree.
You know, one of the things I really love about our community here is that Creator has his hand on each one of us, and he shows us something that we all can contribute together to make beautiful moments like that. That's what I was thinking while you were playing. So, yeah, so now the speaker introduction and this featured sharing. from Brian. Eh? So I'm gonna go ahead and hand it over to you, Brian. Thank you.
All right. Yeah, I didn't think Casey was going to be back, so I was just going to introduce myself. But
Yeah, well, tell us a little bit about yourself. Yeah.
okay. All right. So to the best of my knowledge, I have no native DNA in my body anywhere. But on my mother's side is Hungarian, and my grandparents immigrated over to the United States right before World War II broke out. So I'm like third generation immigrant on my mom's side, Hungarian. My dad's side is, I think, mostly Irish, but it's kind of the UK mishmash. Yeah, before England came over here to colonize, they were colonizing all the other local groups on the islands where they lived. So there's no telling what percentages of anything is with the kind of UK mishmash for most people, and I'm kind of in that category. But yeah, I've always kind of marched to the beat of a different drum a little bit. Shortly after high school, I moved up to Chicago and joined a commune with a bunch of those stinky hippies who came to know Jesus, and lived and worked out of the Chicago area for about the next 25 years. And that's where I met my wife Leah, and all our children were born in Chicago. And about 24 years ago or so is when I really began starting to get interested and invested in indigenous issues, both on this continent and other places in the world. That's how I got interested in a lot of the Siberian stuff, the Southern Siberian stuff I did, which got my voice on the Big Bang Theory at one point, but that's a whole nother story. But anyway, spent about 18 months on the eastern edge of the Navajo Res in 2006, and that's when I first met Casey and Laura, because I was also doing some work with the BIC mission that they were involved in. And then we went back up to Chicago, and then in 2012, I moved down to Albuquerque because my dad had a really bad stroke. So we moved down to help out my folks. And we thought we were just going to be here for a couple years, as long as my dad lasted after he had the stroke. And but it was a really good thing for us to come down. It made a huge difference in my dad's life. And so even though at the end of his life, he was physically in really bad shape, emotionally and spiritually, he was probably the healthiest he had been since he was a very small child. So that was all really good. But then, you know, God kept dropping things in our lap, and Creator kept opening different doors, and we got reconnected with Casey. And so, yeah, 12 years later, I'm still here in Albuquerque doing Good Medicine Way with Casey. So, yeah, so that's a nutshell of me. I've done about everything imaginable in my lifetime, so I don't want to get into everything because it would be a very long and drawn out story. But yeah, but if you ever want to, like, if you're ever in Albuquerque and you want to hang out over a cup of tea or coffee or something, and I have a lot of stories. But anyway, so my interaction with indigenous issues and indigenous rights and indigenous culture has always been from the perspective of an ally, and learning to be a good ally and a respectful ally is, you know, a lifelong journey in and of itself. It's a very delicate process sometimes, and not overstepping bounds, but yet being an effective partner at the same time. So yeah, but what I was thinking about for us here was that over the years in Good Medicine Way, we've talked a lot about what's wrong with the status quo church, and we've talked a lot about the damage that those errors in the status quo church have done to the Native communities, and we've really laid a strong theological and philosophical framework for why contextualization, specifically in the Native context, should be allowed and is a good thing. As Casey shared when he was talking about his dreams and visions, that was a vision that God gave to him. And at one point he said he's been like the guy digging the big rocks out of the field that you want to plant something in and chucking those rocks out to the side. And Casey spent a lot of years heaving rocks. But now Casey has cleared that field for us and others like him. And so now we do have this fertile ground with which to work because of their efforts. So how do we now move forward in a good way to plant and nourish a truly Native expression of faith? So that's what I wanted to look at with everybody today. So I'm gonna go back to those scriptures that we read, and let me share them up here. And so when Karen read them, there's a slight difference in one of them. So in the one from 1 John, he talks about if someone who has many possessions sees another in a need and shows no pity, how can Creator's love remain in that person? Much loved children, our love must not be empty words on our tongue, but deeds done in truth. And I had mentioned when I was sharing with our smaller group about this that I really felt like instead of lack of possessions, we could talk about lack of healing in somebody's life. And Karen really highlighted that for us. But I want to try to keep this a little conversational. So I just want to start here with these scriptures, and then I want to contrast these scriptures with some other stories from the indigenous peoples. But just, the emphasis here that Creator Sets Free is giving is that the new way that he is bringing is all centered on love and relationships. And in fact, he says that will be the sign that people will know that you're walking with me, is if you love one another. And he says that those who love me will do what I say. And what he says is that we should love each other. So it's all kind of wrapped up together. And then I think it's also interesting too that he says that if we walk in Creator's love, that Creator himself in his different expressions will come and make their home in and among us if we walk in Creator's love. So again, it's that emphasis on relationship. So I'm just curious, how do these verses strike anyone as far as in context of nurturing a Native expression of faith? If anybody wants to just yell something out.
Well, I'll start off. One thing I've learned about Native expressions of community is that they care for each other. And especially if the elders are hungry and they're cold and they need rides to the hospital, they need someone to talk to in their home, that's taken care of by the community. They cut the wood so that they have firewood. They drop off food. If they're there, they bring it in and they have talks with them. They bring food by them, make sure they have enough, because not everybody has this. They're not all rich casino Indians, you know. They do have. There's a lot of them that do not have those resources, so they do need care. So those kind of things they're taken care of by the community, and it's gotten away from that. And you know, we are a virtual community, but we somehow we find a way to care for each other. The way you give, the way you're with us all the time, the way you share, and when you talk, when there's question time, you're always there, and there's always support and prayers. We know that from all of you that are part of us. So those things I see is that we have grown to be something like that Native community. I feel that. And if we were in a smaller community where we lived closer together, I think that would be wonderful, because you know, all of you have a special place in Good Medicine Way.
Yeah, so it's interesting that within the Native values and traditions, that caring for each other and caring for people who may have given into your life earlier, but they're not really going to be able to give back. So again, it's that loving without expecting return. That's already baked in to Native understanding. Where in the European tradition, you know, we have poor houses and old folks' homes, and you know, just get them off out of the way. So it's a very different approach. And so again, we have the traditional Native value is in line with what Creator Sets Free was teaching, more so than the European expression. Anybody else have anything they want to toss in? Okay, I'll keep going. But this is, I definitely want it to be like, if you think of something while I'm talking and you want to throw something in, I want to keep this a little bit interactive. But I wanted to contrast what we read from Creator's Word, which a lot of that was Creator Sets Free's own words. I wanted to contrast that with three things from traditional Native communities. And one is from the Haudenosaunee people, you know, the Great Iroquois Confederacy, and, you know, their experience with the peacemaker and the other people that were involved in him. I also want to look at some stuff that Chief Joseph said, and I want to look at some stuff from Buffalo Calf Woman. So I think I'll start with the Hiawatha story. So I'll just give a very brief rundown of it in case you're not familiar with it. But the Haudenosaunee people were along what is now the border of Canada and the United States, in kind of like upstate New York and the lower areas of Canada there. There was 5 primary tribes, and at this point in their history, there was a lot of conflict and war going on among them, and the most notorious warrior chief was Tadonaho. I'm going to get these names wrong, but you can look it up and get them right. But he was especially cruel and known to be like especially fierce. But there was some people among those tribes that were really getting weary of war, and one of them was someone who just became known as the Peacemaker, and he began talking about ways that they could put down warfare and live in peace. And one of the first people who came alongside him was the person that we know as Hiawatha. But an aspect of the story that is often overlooked is the importance of women in this peace movement. Tecumseh was the first kind of clan mother that came alongside Peacemaker, but she had already been working on her own to try to find ways to bring peace. So where she lived was where a lot of warriors would come through before or after they would go to fight with the other tribes, and she would welcome anyone into her longhouse and feed them and let them stay the night as long as they agreed to be peaceful within her longhouse. She's like, no fighting in the longhouse. But then a lot of times she would have members from the tribes who had been fighting each other, and she would basically tell them like, hey, I'm serving you from the same pot of food. So if you're gonna eat together from the same pot, that makes you kin, and that means you need to stop fighting. And usually, they would either agree to that or they would leave. So she was already making headway and laying the groundwork for a peace accord among the people. And I think we see that in the scriptures a lot, where you see Jesus inviting women into spaces that at that point in time women had been excluded from. And so I think the importance of women in the community is something that we also see Creator Sets Free emphasizing. So I think for us that is a way forward as we grow native expressions of faith to create a faith space that completely honors the role of women and the contributions that women can bring equal with what men bring. And some could argue that it might even be more important. But in any case, with the Peacemaker and Hiawatha and Chikosensei, they, like her role in being able to communicate with the other tribes, because she had already laid a groundwork as sort of being an ambassador. So she was the one who could make first contact with other tribes because there was people in those other tribes who already knew her. So that was one of the things I wanted to emphasize. And so in this, as it goes along, the first group of people that they go to, they talk with them for about a year before they finally come on board with it. And so then you have two of the tribes have agreed to be at peace. And then they go and they get two more of the five tribes. But the last tribe, the guy who's always refusing to talk and refusing to go along, is Todohano, because all his power comes from being at war. And a lot of people wanted to just figure out a way to sideline him and get him out of the picture. But the Peacemaker refused to give up on anybody. And he was like, we are all made by the same Creator. And even those who have lost their way still somewhere in there understands Creator's way of peace, because that's how he made us to be. And so the Peacemaker did not give up on this very wicked chief. And they did an interesting thing when they proposed to him, when he was kind of the last holdout. They said, what if we give you a position of honor in the council? And so at first, this bad guy was like, oh yeah, I can totally take advantage of it, and I can turn it on its head, and I can make it all work to my advantage. And as he was thinking about this, Chikonsase then directly confronted him in a way that kind of shamed him into doing what was right. And then once he had kind of softened a little bit, then Hiawatha and Peacemaker showed him that the place of honor that they wanted to give him was really the place of having to work together with everybody. And in the confederacy that they had, like, all decisions had to be unanimous. Like, nobody was ever left out. And if they couldn't come to an agreement, they would figure out a different way to talk about it and figure out a way to come together, and they would all come into agreement about it. So that's the first story I wanted to look at, and that's a very brief version of it. There's lots of resources online, or if you know somebody from one of those Iroquois nations who knows a story keeper, I would say ask them. But anyway, so anybody have anything to say about Hiawatha the Peacemaker and Jacone Sase, or any insights along that line? I guess just all going to wait for the official question and response time.
I'll tell you something about that, is that, the United States government under Benjamin Franklin, he knew about the Haudenosaunee and the way they ran their communities, and he observed the way they made decisions. And at that time, the women, the clan mothers, were very important in any decision that took place. So they, but when it went into our government, the male domination of it really kind of put that aside. But they did take the influence and the way they made decisions, and when you would say in a democracy kind of way, they took that democratic way of making decisions and moved it into the United States government. So, but there's just a lot of good that came out of that. But I think if they would have kept the woman a focus there, the matriarchal focus of it, is that there has to be men and women in decision making. And it really wasn't for a long time. Congress was just dominated with men for a long time. And then sprinkles of women started coming into leadership there. I think things would have been a lot better if they could have taken on more of that.
Yeah. If they would have treated it as a working model instead of a smorgasbord where they could just pick and choose whatever they want.
I like this part and this part, but not that part.
No, and it was that was a huge influence really on our founding fathers. In fact, that's part of the reason why the American emblem has an eagle with arrows in its claw, is because when they made the final agreement to make this confederation, one of the things that they did was that they dug a hole under this tree and they buried their weapons under it. That's where our phrase "bury the hatchet" comes from. But then this eagle landed on top of the tree, and they took that as a sign that they were going in a good way. And they said that the eagle will be our protector and watch out for us. And then with all the arrows, is because that was one of the examples that they gave, was they would say if you take one arrow, you can break it, one person can break it. But if you bind the arrows together, then you can't break them. So if we band together in peace, then we're going to be unbreakable. So that's, even our American emblem is taken from the Iroquois Confederacy. But we totally messed it up when we didn't give women a seat. In fact, in their Confederacy, the men, there would be men that would be chosen to sit at the seat, but in the hall where the person sat, there was a wampum belt that was representative of the women. So it basically said that the man is here in the council, but the seat belongs to the women, was how they did it, because the women had the power to choose who went to the council, and they could choose to remove that person too. So the women actually had a lot of power, and they were the ones who really knew what were going on.
I heard one part when they were making big decisions, when the white government started taking a lot of influence, that they wouldn't talk to the women to make decisions. They would talk to the men, but then they would have a break. The native men would go talk to the women and tell them what they were saying, and then the women told them how you should respond. Yeah. That was something I read. That happened with
I believe that happened with the Navajo too, because when they were down in Redondo, and it was the women, the Navajo women, who ensured that they got their home territories back as part of reserve, because the men were ready to give up, and the women were like, "No way! Like, this is what you need to say."
Yeah.
So I think for us going forward, building a native expression of faith, that women need to have a very prominent and involved role, because we are all in this together. And as the peacemaker said, we are all created by the same Creator, and we all carry His peace within us. So, one thing I wanted to look at from Chief Joseph, which again, all these people that we're talking about are people that were in difficult situations and made a determination to take a way of peace and be a peacemaker of some kind. Because again, Creator Sets Free tells us that, peacemakers will be known as the children of God. But Chief Joseph, Nez Perce, so they were trying. So the government had agreed with the Nez Perce for them to keep a certain amount of land and whatever, and they had all these negotiations. They'd agreed to that, and then like a couple years later, the American government came back with another treaty pulled out of their hat somewhere that basically cut the land in half. And the Nez Perce said, no, this is the other treaty you gave us. And so there was this big conflict, and the army started hounding the Nez Perce. So at one point in this process, the Nez Perce were trying to get into Canada to kind of regroup and escape the U.S. Army. And there was a lot of suffering and a lot of death that was occurring as part of this. And so at some point, Chief Joseph was like, we can't fight anymore. This isn't working. Like, we're all going to die out here if we stay this course. We gotta do something else. And so there's a famous speech that he says where he talks about, I'm never going to fight again because this has only brought suffering to my people, which is important. But the one thing I really kind of want to emphasize, again, it goes back to that scripture from 1 John where it said, like, if you see somebody in need and you don't do anything about it, how is the love of God in you? And there's a lot of other places in the scripture where that same idea is echoed, that if you just say the right things but you don't do the right things, then it doesn't matter. And that was one of the things that Chief Joseph really lamented, was all the empty talk. And one of the famous quotes of his is, I'm tired of talk that comes to nothing. It makes my heart sick when I remember all the good words and then all the broken promises. And then Chief Joseph also, like the peacemaker, also had said that all people were made by the same great spirit chief. We are all relatives. The earth is mother of us all, and all people should have equal rights. And so again, echoing that emphasis on relationship, that we're all related to each other, we're all in this together. We all need to figure out how to work with each other and not just try to dominate each other. So that I really felt like there was a lot of synergy between what Chief Joseph was saying and what John was saying in 1 John.
Yeah, I'll chime in a little bit here. On this trip that I just took to Sioux Falls, South Dakota, my daughter Shawndine, and we picked up Cheryl Bear's son, Randall. He goes by Bear. We picked up this bear in Colorado. And he's as big as a bear. He's like 6'5", 250. He's a big guy. Well, we picked him up at the airport, and then we went on up to South Dakota. And what we did is I made this as a trip for Shawndine to kind of kind of see the world that I worked in for quite a while. I did immersion schools in South Dakota. So we went to Pine Ridge first, was our first place, and then we took a trip out of town and then went up to Wounded Knee, and we spent some time there to see the mass grave of where Chief Joseph and his band were slaughtered. And then we went on further down into Mission, and then seen that's the school there. Went up to St. Francis, and we at the cemetery to see Richard Twist's gravesite. They had never seen it, so it was real powerful for them to sit there and be with Richard's tombstone and the site. And then from there we went on to see Dignity, the big statue Dignity that's in Chamberlain, South Dakota. That whole time. But I wanted to say that the story of Chief Joseph is in the book and also the movie Buried My Heart at Wounded Knee. And everything he said about the broken treaties and the at least they knew that if they crossed the Canadian border, they were out of the realm of the white U.S. troops. And then they had to deal with the Canadian though. So there was a lot of, but if they got there, they could be safe. And that's kind of tragic that they have to do that. But Chief Joseph in the movie really they go back and forth about the broken treaties and how they're moving forward. And it seems like they go through and okay, well, we got this treaty, let's try this one on them.
Yeah.
Let's work with that one, and if they don't take that one, let's do this one, because this one here we can get all their land and all their possessions if we use this one then too. And if that don't work, then we'll send Custer, and then he can continue to slaughter the rest of them. And it's like, what are their odds of surviving in that world? And what happens is that they get slaughtered by the 7th Cavalry, which was George Custer's unit, the 7th Cavalry that got killed at Greasy Grass. So it was like a revenge on them. So you can't win in that process. So how did they move forward? But I just wanted to share that if you wanted to see a lot of what he just mentioned is in that movie, and it's a really good movie to watch.
Yeah. So I think a lot of the emphasis is like that the way of peace is what Greater Sets Free calls us to, and the way of love, and the way of keeping our relationships healthy and harmonious. But if you are among people of violence, that's very challenging to do. And a lot of people want to make exceptions when it's like, oh, this situation is too difficult. You can't do that and whatever. And like one activist guy I knew, and he was saying if you're going to commit to nonviolence, but then you make all these exceptions for war, he's like, that's like saying you're a vegetarian except for when you eat. Like it's like anyone can say they're a vegetarian between meals. Like it doesn't mean anything. And I think that's again like echoes what Chief Joseph was saying and what was said there in 1 John, that our words need to carry meaning, and what we say we believe we need to live out with our actions. So the last thing I wanted to look at was Buffalo Calfwoman. And she is someone, again, an important matriarch in the story. We have you find them everywhere. And she's a little bit more of a mystery. She was some sort of spirit being, like exactly what sort of spirit being she was. Different people have different ideas about it. But she was somebody special. And the one thing that always struck me with the story of Buffalo Calfwoman is, so there's this incident where she first meets these two warriors that are out trying to find food for their tribe. And when she appears before them, one of them is just filled with bad thoughts and wants to do bad things. And he ends up like perishing in this whirlwind. And the other one, she sends him to go back and to tell the tribe, hey, prepare this meeting place because I need to have this big meeting with you because I have something important to tell you. And as she's approaching the people, she's singing a song as she comes to them. And one of the lines that is repeated in the song, she keeps saying, I am walking with visible breath to these people. And at first you might be like, what the heck is that supposed to mean? But what she's saying is, regardless of where I came from, regardless of what kind of spiritual being I am, I have become one of you. I am a human like you. See, I have breath. I'm breathing like you do, and I'm walking like you do. So it's kind of like, it kind of harkens to like the incarnation. And again, in the early church, the first couple centuries of the church, the fact of the incarnation was a much bigger deal than the sacrifice and the resurrection was a big deal too, but the incarnation was like the bigger deal, more so than the cross. And so you see this emphasis here where she says, I'm walking with visible breath to these people. And then again, she comes and she's bringing them a way of peace, a way of living in harmony. And she emphasizes to them, like she gives them a lot of teachings and she gives them the pipe. And she really emphasizes to them, like there's all kinds of different ceremonies where they're to use the pipe. But the one thing she emphasizes, she says, above all else, remember this is a peace pipe. So that's like the core of it is to live in good relationship with each other, to be in harmony, to walk in beauty, to be at peace, to walk in love with each other. She to teach them to live peacefully together, she taught them to do prayers together and to do songs together and to do ceremony together and to do things together. That was the thing, because when you do things together, you remember that you're related. And she emphasizes you need to have a good heart and a good mind when you do ceremonies and honor the sacred places and the ceremonies and the sacred site, because everything that is sacred is where you can commune with the Great Spirit. And she said, gather there often and sing and pray and use the pipe. So there's a lot more to that story, but those were the parts of it I kind of wanted to emphasize. And then, there was a bunch of hands up, and now they all went away. But Helen's is still there. So, Helen, you get to go.
I think maybe as you went along, you were covering the points that people were going to talk about. So maybe they put their hands down for that reason. I remember one part of Hiawatha's story that moved me was that in the process of trying to reach peace, his daughters were murdered. And that could have broken him. That would have broken a lot of people. He could have committed to revenge for that, but he didn't. That must have been an incredible dark night of the soul, I guess, for him. And yet he emerged from it a stronger person and achieved what he did. I think that's something that moved me. That I know you were talking about people who want to make exceptions, like to be a vegetarian between meals, or we are going to be violent except for this example. And here he had been tested more than most of us are tested, and more than anyone should be. I don't think any parent should have to lose a child, but he still accomplished this. I thought that made it all the greater. Sorry, I think a cat commented meow, but she's fine.
That's a great point, because depending on which version of the story you hear, like exactly when and how his daughters died, stories say that he had 3, and they all ended up dying in different ways. But yeah, it could have been something that just set him on a path of vengeance. But he realized, like, this immense suffering I'm going through, other people should not have to experience this. We have to find a different way. So again, it's that committing to a path of peace and a path of harmony. So yeah, and you other people who had your hands up, like, I'd love to hear your perspectives, even if I talked about what you thought you were going to talk about, because hearing all those perspectives is what gives us a fuller and richer picture of what's going on.
I have one more thing to add, if possible. I remember a similar story of a Celtic queen named Boudica, whose daughters were raped by the Romans, and she did commit to vengeance and eventually lost. And I remember thinking, I'm with you. I understand what you've gone through and stuff, but it's like the minute when I watch a tragedy and I see somebody think things over and still go down the wrong path, and this is where everything turns. And then I think back to Hiawatha, how that could easily have happened. But anyway, I've already made that point, so let's let somebody else talk.
And I know Eshe had his hand up, but he put it back down. Did you want to say something, Eshe?
Sure, yeah. I was trying to figure out how to say it. That's why I put my hand down. So let me figure out how to articulate this before I put my hand back up. But no, we're just talking about peacemaking. I was just thinking about how, like, we usually think of peacemaking, we usually think of our enemies or someone that's hostile to us. But sometimes the ones that can be the most hostile are the ones we think should be closest to us, or the ones we think should be gone to terms with, the ones we think we can trust. And in this context, I'm like specifically talking about like a faith in greater become human or greater sets free that is from a native perspective, how that is perceived as a threat by the mainstream Jesus followers, by a lot of them. And so it's like there's these teachings of Jesus that are very clear, and yet everybody interprets them differently. And like how, like, it's kind of interesting that we live in a time and we are culmination of the history that there are those who claim to be Jesus followers and those who are also claiming to be Jesus followers, but who's actually living by those teachings. And how do we make space for talking about that and normalizing conversations about that? I think there's a lot more conversations that are needed for that for Native people, because as soon as you call yourself a Christian or a follower of Jesus, you're assumed to be a colonizer. Such as the thought I had in terms of peacemaking with all of our like our traditions and the people in our communities, north to south, that have demonstrated and have rich histories of peacemaking in different ways.
Yeah, and I think it's important to recognize that peacemaking is not passive. Like, you don't, like, being a peacemaker doesn't mean you just like sit to the side and let the bullies just run amok. Like, that's not peacemaking. Peacemaking means you get in the way of the bullies, but you don't be overcome by evil. You overcome evil with good. So you find a different way, but you don't just let those that are bent on violence do their thing and you just stay out of the way. Like, that's not peacemaking. That's just avoidance. So peacemaking is difficult, and it's hard, and it's challenging, and it often involves a lot of loss and sacrifice. Yes.
I was just gonna say, I think taking care of kids and just like interacting with kids kind of like gives you experience in peacemaking because kids fight so much. Like this past week I attended like a 3-day mind body camp that was at Theru Middle School, which is like a middle school on the res, like the Navajo res. So we had like a lot of international like people volunteering and helping out, and honestly, it was heartwarming to see so many people from different nations like coming together to help out res kids, like putting on this event. And it was like fun. Like it was the middle school students, it was their last week of school. So like each of the like volunteers taught like a class. I taught like fan making and painting. And like there were other like activities like Taekwondo. They had 2 black belts from Korea come and teach that class, which was really cool. But anyway, so like just that I got worked to the bone that during those 3 days. I have experience teaching high schoolers and like little kids, elementary school kids, but middle schoolers is something else. It's like they really will just like fight at the drop of a hat. So it was like hard to like, well, I don't know, for me it was kind of hard to step into that adult role because there's a lot of times where I don't feel like one. And just kind of like I don't like telling people what to do, but what involved like stepping into like being like the oldest person in the room or being like the adult or whatever, it's like you kind of have to tell people to like, hey, like don't do that to your sister, or like when like someone else, there was this one kid that just loved to talk, and he would try to like try to annoy me all the time, but like I didn't get annoyed. So and there was a time where I was trying to lecture one of like the other kids, but he kept interrupting. And I was like, okay, if you want to stand here, if you want to be with us and be part of this conversation, you have to be quiet when someone is talking. If you want to be loud and be like, go play in like the play area, be over there. Like you can't have both. You can't be here and be loud. Yeah. And like, oh my gosh, it's just like it's hard having such a firm foot with like those type of situations. And I don't know, this whole kind of like peacemaking things really brought that to my mind because it's the most recent thing, I guess.
Yeah.
Sounds like Congress.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Kids.
Yeah. And Congress could learn a lot from like middle schoolers. All right, looks like Eshe's got his thoughts together.
A little bit. I was just gonna say, like, we've been talking about peacemaking, and this was really insightful for me. Like, I was listening to a podcast episode from Bible Project, and many of us, I think, have been brought up, like we've been talking about, like the teachings of Jesus and stuff. Like, they were talking about, like, where in the Sermon on the Mount, where Jesus, like, basically says, like, if you get hit on the right cheek, turn your left to them also. And how Tim Mackey was talking about, like, in that culture, like, if you got hit on the right cheek, it's implied that you got hit with the back of your hand, which is like someone slapping you as an inferior. And so by turning your left cheek to them, you're telling them to hit you now as an equal. So it's making them think about it, which is like almost like you're talking about like active resistance, but non-violently, like getting the opposer to think about their actions and say, well, what am I like? So there's that one. And then they were talking about what was the other one? There were 2 more, but the other one I'm thinking of was I can't remember the other one. Come back, no, I'll think about the other 2. That's all the mental juice I have for now.
Yeah, I have heard that perspective on that as well. And there's a lot of things that Jesus taught that had very different meaning to these people who were being oppressed by the Romans. And I think a lot of times the significance of what he was saying is lost. And I think that, when someone strikes you on the one tree, turn to him the other, like we don't get that what he was really saying, because it wasn't just saying like, oh, let the person beat you up. It's like, remind the person of who you are. And again, it's like that emphasis on relationship. Remind them that, hey, we're really brothers. We're made by the same creator. Is this really how we want to treat each other? You know? So yeah, it's, those insights are really illuminating when we find them.
I remember the rest of it too. So the other two, so the one was like, if you the cloak one, you know, like if someone takes your cloak, like give them your undergarment also. And in that culture, like you only had two sets of clothing: your cloak, which was like your warmth, like your outer garment, almost like your rain jacket or something to keep you warm at night. That was kind of like your blanket and clothing all in one. And then your undergarments, which were like, you know, like your undershirt, or, you know, the equivalent of your undershirt or your underwear. So like basically he was saying like, basically you'd be naked, like if you give them so like saying that people in that, around that area are going to see that, and they're going to be like, whoa, like look at what this person did. So it's going to also get them to think about it. And then like the other one with the mile, going a mile, I guess, in with the Roman occupation that you were talking about, the Romans were allowed to get people to walk for a mile. Like that was the maximum they could do legally under the Roman system that was imposed by their subjects. And so by Jesus saying, walk the other mile with them, it's also getting them to think about their actions and getting them to be like, wow, why is this person doing this? Like, even though they're not mandated to. So it's all, like you were talking about, like kind of rooted in resistance, but not as most people think of resistance. So it's getting the one we perceive to be our enemy, like you were saying, that relationship, getting them to see that they are a human being who has maybe strayed from that path, and getting them to reevaluate what path they're on.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting just hearing you say that. It just, it kind of re-emphasizes to me the part in the, the Hiawatha and the Peacemaker story about how, they were unwilling to give up on the guy who was like the brutal warrior guy. And you see that reflected there in what Jesus was doing, in his teaching of the people. He was doing it in a way that was allowing a path open for the oppressor to be redeemed and to stop being an oppressor. Like we could do a whole thing about the book of Philemon about that. I mean, there's, that's what that whole book is really about. But yes, that's another one you can look into when you're talking about reconciliation and peacemaking. The book of Philemon is another good one.
I have two more thoughts.
Sure, go ahead, Nikki.
Well, I guess like the first one. So, I think when you said like the word like what was it, like oppressor or whatever, that made me think of like this one video that was posted on. There's this one Twitter account that like posts like we rate dogs and stuff, and it's like, oh, and it like, they often post like videos of like just cute dogs. It's like, oh, 10 out of 10 or 100 out of 10, cute, whatever. And there was one video that was different from the rest. So it was a protest video from one of the kind of like, I think it was like one of like the university protests, like the pro-Palestine one. And the police were like full body armor, and they were like trying to do crowd control, but they were getting a little too rough, and there was like K9 unit present, and like the K9 units are all like trained to like attack the aggressor. Like, so any situation where like someone's being aggressive, they'll attack the aggressor. But so during the protests, the police were getting too rough with the protesters. That the dogs, the canine units, were like grabbing onto the sleeve of like the police uniform and like stopping them from hurting the protesters. And like I just think that like animals are pretty good peacemakers in a way.
Yeah.
Where it's like they don't like, you know, they can be fair, like they see what's in front of them and they act accordingly type thing. And then this other thought is like definitely separate from this like dog story, but so like the whole talk about like nonviolence and like protesting peace and whatnot, it always makes me think of this Malcolm X quote where he talks about like nonviolence only works when when your opponent has a conscience.
Yeah.
So like the U.S. government has none. That's why nonviolent protests won't work. And I always think of that quote, and I don't know. Like I feel like just bringing that up could bring up more discussion about kind of, I guess, everyone's view on that, because I can't help but agree. Because like there's a lot of times where like nonviolent protests were like done, and like they were always like, you know, treated with such violence, and it's just like to persevere and just to like not react and just to like, you know, not even like defend yourself. And it's just like, I don't know like how they did it, and it's just admirable. And like it made a point, right? But I can't help but think of like other protests that maybe may not have worked the same, or it just takes a lot of like courage and whatnot to do it, and planning.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's true. Like, and certainly Malcolm X and Martin Luther King had a lot of discussions about how to do those kinds of things. Yeah, and it was basically like Malcolm X was just like, because it is true. Like if you're doing an action or a movement that's not violent, you're appealing to the conscience of the oppressor. Mm-hmm. You know, and Malcolm X was basically saying there's so little conscience there, if there's any, that it's not going to work. And Martin Luther King would be like, no, it's in there somewhere. We just have to give it time to like reemerge. And Malcolm X would basically be like, I don't got that kind of time. Mm-hmm. You know, so it was that kind of back and forth. So yeah, and again, that's that thing that often committing to being a peacemaker is often a longer struggle. But I think the thing that you also see, I can't remember, there was this gal, sociologist, who did this big study on nonviolent resistance versus violent resistance. And her study, it over and over again, it found that when people resorted to means of violence, like the results were never lasting. Like they would have a quicker victory, but it would burn out, and the other people would come back and we'd take them over, and it just kind of continued these cycles of violence. And when people committed to nonviolent ways, like often it took longer, but once you got there, like it was a more lasting peace. Mm-hmm. And it's also that ways of violence inherently favor young, strong people, and usually the people who are suffering the most are the people who are kind of marginalized in a community and who aren't young and strong and can't provide for themselves as easily. Mm-hmm. And so nonviolent movements bring those people into the movement as well and respect their humanity and identity. But if you're like on the ground and watching your friends get killed, like, are you gonna like? I would like to think that I could commit to nonviolence, but if I was really in the middle of a situation like that, I don't know what I would really do. So it's and those are hard questions, but I think those are like, you need to ask the hard questions, because if you just like pretend the hard questions don't exist, you're going to face them at some point. And so if you've never thought about them, then you're going to be in a lot of trouble. But those are definitely things that we need to figure out. And as we move forward as a movement trying to live out Creator Sets Free's heart and purpose in the world, and to do that in a way that honors Native culture and allows, what we really see, the Native traditions really are already in line with what Jesus taught. So, bringing those up to the fore and saying, hey, this is really part of the traditions. It's just, it's just came from an indigenous guy who was on the other side of the world, but it's the same indigenous values and traditions. They were just on different sides. But we're going to run into those situations probably, and they're going to be difficult to work through when we get there for sure. Always asking the hard questions.
Yeah.
That's good. It's important.
Yeah, you brought up things I just never thought of before, so thank you.
All right, Ken, speaking of a long-term activist guy.
Yeah. Hey, can you hear me okay? All right. Yeah, I'm part of a 500-year-old tradition of nonviolence, and moving in the last generations from a non-resistant kind of passive way of being into a more of an active resistance kind of a status. But I think one of the underlying things, and one of the things that's drawing me into this conversation, into this movement, is the sense of connection between people and between things within the cosmos, basically, that supersedes individual identity. And I think that's what makes it possible sometimes for us to give up our own self, I don't want to say self-protection, but just our own self-identity. And we yield ourselves to the larger community, to the larger movement, sometimes. And that sometimes does call for a certain kind of sacrifice of our own individual self-protection. I see that within the indigenous, what I hear here from time to time. I think it's woven into the way of understanding, and it's all about being related to our relatives. It's all about being connected, and I think that to me is what makes it possible to think about it this way. So I'm just saying that it does take time. It's not when we're talking about resisting the powers and dealing with the kind of systemic, deep systemic issues like the doctrine of discovery and the laws that have been established and the colonizing systems of our culture. It just, you have to think in terms of not one generation, not two, 7 generations maybe before things can be changed. And that means giving up my own individual need to have everything fixed right now, but I need to get in line with the movement toward justice and do all I can to help reestablish right relationship within and between all parts of the universe, all parts of the world.
Yeah, that reminds me a lot of J.R.R. Tolkien's whole idea of the long defeat, where like you need to be a part of the struggle that is working for what's right, even if you're never going to see the results of it. And he kind of brings it out in the Lord of the Rings trilogy. There's a point where Sam and Frodo, the 2 hobbits that are carrying the ring that needs to be destroyed to vanquish the evil person, and they're just in this horrible situation, and and they're having this discussion about, man, how can we keep going on? And one of them says, like, we may never see the dawn, but I know the dawn is coming. So we have to keep working towards that, even if we will not get to see the benefit of it. So yeah, but those are hard paths to choose to take. for sure. You know, to do what you know is right, even though you know that you may be the one that gives a lot of sacrifice, but you never see the benefit. But if you know that, you know, generations down the line, the world's going to be a better place for it, you know, then it's worth it. But yeah, that's a hard and noble decision to have to stand by. All right. Any last questions or comments? Now we'll go into our round dance.
Hey, sorry, Brian. I do have a. I do
Oh
have a
no, go
little.
ahead.
Yeah.
Final word.
So, so we were talking about like the way of love and peace and harmony, and the the importance of women too to have a say or something. Um, but okay, so while we were talking about all these different women leaders, or like these women who are kind of like standing behind the men a little bit, I was thinking about there's this joke, there's this joke that I used to read in one of those old Indian joke books, but it was talking about how there were like four different types of women, usually within the Native community. Some come from certain tribes and some don't. Some of them are just this way. But I was thinking about like women walking behind their men, like following them. Women walking beside their men, moving with them. Women walking in front of their men, like guiding them. And then there's the women that walk all over their men. Hey, it's like Lakota women, they beat up their men. Just kidding. But anyway, so there was that. And then while you were speaking too, I was thinking like we were talking about peacemaking, and it was like the question that came to mind is like, how can we make peace with one another? Like, not only within our tribes, because I know our tribes fight a lot, we don't all get along, but we try, and then with other ethnicities, with people that come from different lands, like Brian, but like, how can we make peace with one another, And the other one is, why do you think the women are known to stand behind their men? I don't know. Those are the two questions that came to mind while I was listening to what we were talking about. But love and peace, love and peace. But yeah, so that's all I wanted to share a little bit. That
Yeah,
funny joke-ish kind of thing. And then everything else. So yeah.
yeah. No, I mean, there's a lot I think that can be said about women of faith and how we see women in church history and in the biblical narrative, especially. I've talked before about how I feel like that Paul gets misinterpreted a lot by the evangelical church, especially, and the whole kind of the whole concept of like the complementarian thing, and about how like women have a lesser role and whatever, and how that's really not in the scripture, and that's absolutely not what Paul was trying to communicate with those scriptures. If you search on our YouTube channel and just like search for the ones that I did, you can find the one I did. But there's a newer thing that just came out that where this theologian wrote this thing where he said that when you really look into the scriptures, you see women in with the disciples the whole time, but the women never get mentioned because they're doing things the right way. And so the stories are always about like the disciples, because they're the ones who keep messing it up. And so they're the ones that have the lessons for us to learn from, because they keep making the mistakes. But you just see the women in the background faithfully serving and doing things the right way. And even, when Jesus is crucified, it's the women and John, who was like 12 or 13 at the time, who are there at the end with them, and the men are nowhere to be found. So again, you have the example of it's the women who are doing things the right way, and then you know, on the day of the resurrection, it's the women who go to the tomb first. It's the women who are doing things the right way. The men are all off hiding and cowering somewhere. It's the women who the angels give the responsibility to carry the message of the resurrection to everyone else, because the angels know that the women will get it done correctly. What I just said could like definitely open up a firestorm depending on what kind of group of people you say it in. But I think that's really what you see the scriptures pointing towards. So that's just kind of like a little snippet. But I do think that a lot of the kind of patriarchal tendencies in the church really, you know, descends all the way back from Roman ideology and how that's infiltrated into the church over the centuries. But when you really look at what Jesus and the disciples did, and you really look at what Paul was really saying in his writing, you know, when you look at who he was writing to, the situations that they were in, and how freely he could or could not speak to them, then you really see this picture of women being very honored and having prominent positions in the early church, and really being leaders in the faith movement. And I think anecdotally, you even see that in the churches now, that even though a lot of times men have the spotlight positions, it's women within the church who really kind of keep everything going. So I think there's a lot to be said for honoring women within faith movement. Yeah. I'm trying not to get totally up on my soapbox. That's definitely what I can talk about for a long time.
Very good.
All right. Last chance to throw out a comment before I switch all the microphones over for the song.
I have a comment off the topic. Is the newsletter online yet?
No, it's not online yet.
Ken.
We can get it online. Ken has that is in my court. Ken has given me the files.
All right.
So we just need, but yeah, I can get them up on Facebook pretty quickly and easily.
Okay,
So,
yeah,
we can do that.
just the last announcement, the newsletter is out. Yep, so we'll be getting that out there electronically soon, and I took hundreds of them over to the symposium this weekend, and we'll give out hundreds this coming week to the Methodist annual conference.
All right, so yeah.
I
Go
was
ahead.
on something that then Doctor said. I think one of her questions was talking about like when there's like she was mentioning like the intertribal conflict that happens even present in different ways, different manifestations between different tribal nations. Like how do we, or between different groups of people around the world, you know, that come from different backgrounds, culturally and ethnically. How do we heal those wounds? And I was just thinking like they're not healing because a lot of people don't want them to heal. But as followers of Creator Sets Free, we have a unique role because we are part of these communities. We come from different communities. And so in that way, when we stay connected to our ethnic communities, we can have a unique perspective and say, hey, like we can influence people for peace and be influencers. I think of like, you know, Desmond Tutu and like the work that they did in South Africa, you know, like with like prayer and like lobbying and like that whole South African apartheid should have ended really in like bloodshed, like on a massive scale. And because of the work of followers of Jesus who were from that land, like that was prevented. And so I think about like what that means for us coming from different nations. How do we interact with our communities and how do we be a different voice than maybe some of the voices that are being spoken.
Ooh, very good. So yeah, so feel free to sing or dance in your space, as it is a round dance after all.
Hey. Hey, that was great, you guys. That was great. Sorry, Uncle, were you gonna say something?
Oh, I was just whispering. Is Namar on? Yes, he is.
Yes. So now, as we started our service off with prayer, we're going to end with prayer. So I'm gonna pass this over to Namar Newson, our published author here, if he is already connecting. Hey. All right. So I'm gonna go ahead and pass it on over to you, Namar. Go ahead and give us our send-off blessing.
Thank you very much, Mpedadaka, my beloved sister. Thank you all very much for sharing. Thank you, Brian. Thank you, Pops, for all that was shared this evening. Praise to Creator Sets Free for bringing you all back safely from Nate's. And I am very confident that that was a wonderful experience. And I do have a mission to make it back there in the next year. So also, I am extremely grateful about giving honor to our holy women. And by understanding that we are the best representatives of Creator Sets Free Jesus when we show each other how to love one another and how to do it the right way. And we have to understand what love is, what true love is. And the only way to know that is to really follow God, for it is written that God is love. With that being said, let us humble ourselves before the Lord, before Creator sets free. Father God, in the name of your Son, Creator sets free, O Jesus, by means of your great Spirit, the Holy Spirit. Thank you for how you have blessed us this evening with the teaching and the sharing and all the great insights from your brilliantly intelligent young men and women. Thank you for the brethren. Thank you for this fellowship. Thank you for all that we have learned tonight and the opportunity to worship in the way that you have made us. May this teaching, may this speech tonight that came forth remind us about how to truly be followers of you above the title of being Christian, but being followers of you, following your way, following the Jesus way, following the way of the Holy Spirit, following the way of our Heavenly Father, God the Father. May the word that came tonight not fall on deaf ears, but may it be carried on as a life changer for us and a ministry changer for us as a brethren. And may we carry this and teach others how to do the same. First, by knowing what true love is, as you are love, O God. It is written in your word, God is love. May we first learn how to love you so that we can love each other better, and then we will become better practitioners of being followers of you, and that the world will see that we are true followers of you because of how we love one another, how we treat one another. May your Holy Spirit, may your great Spirit, may your great story of the good road continue to bless others and keep us safe and protected from harm's way. And may we continue to meet as a brethren for this gathering. And may this gathering continue to grow and continue to love others and to change lives. I thank you that I feel the love of you through this fellowship, through the people here. I thank you for this. O Creator sets free, Jesus. Thank you for your great Spirit. Thank you, our Heavenly Father. And may our lives give glory and honor and unto you alone. And may we praise you every day and love one another with thanksgiving as we are grateful for what you have done for us and that the holy women have been able to see that you have risen and to teach us and that we can now teach the world both now and forevermore. In your holy name, Creator sets free, O Jesus. Oh, may it be so.
I hope.
All right, thank you all. Wonderful evening. Glad I made it back.
Yep. Glad to have you back.
Yeah, we got here. All right, thank you. You got somebody to help you?
All right. Have a good night, everybody. And thank you again. I look forward to